Today we gather not only with our lips to recite words, but with our hearts to touch something deeper. The Holy Rosary is not just a prayer, it is a path that step by step invites us into silence, clarity, and connection with something greater than ourselves. On this day, September 8, 2025, the joyful mysteries remind us of beginnings, of openness, of saying yes to life's challenges with trust. Just as discipline in training the body brings strength, discipline in prayer brings peace to the mind and courage to the soul. So let us treat the Rosary not as repetition, but as meditation, not as obligation, but as opportunity. Opportunity to enter presence, to center ourselves, and to discover that the greatest transformation begins always within. Discipline in prayer is discipline in life. These words may sound simple, but their depth can only be understood when they are lived. Often we look at prayer as something separate, something we do only at certain times of the day or only in particular circumstances. But prayer, especially the Rosary, is not a task on a checklist. It is training. It is cultivation of the mind, of the heart, and of the spirit. When we commit to it with discipline, it becomes the mirror of how we live our entire lives. Think for a moment about any skill worth mastering, whether it is martial arts, playing an instrument, or learning a language. It demands discipline, not once, not twice, but consistently over time. Without this quality, even the most gifted individual will see little progress. Prayer works in the same way. The Rosary is not meant to be rushed through or treated casually. Its value lies in the discipline of returning to it again and again, day after day, even when our minds are distracted, even when our bodies are tired, even when we feel no immediate result. This act of persistence reshapes us. With each Hail Mary, we learn patience. With each meditation on the mysteries, we sharpen our ability to focus. And with each return to the beads, we practice humility, because discipline requires us to accept that growth does not happen instantly. Instead, it unfolds quietly, gradually, and only through faithful repetition. In this way, the discipline of prayer becomes a training ground for life itself. When you discipline yourself to pray, you also discipline yourself to live with intention. Think of how the Rosary is structured. Each decade guides us step by step, bead by bead, never jumping ahead, never rushing. This same rhythm teaches us how to approach our daily challenges. Too often in life, we want results without process. We want joy without patience, success without sacrifice, peace without practice. But the Rosary reminds us that true growth only comes when we honor each step, no matter how small, and trust the journey. Discipline in prayer also strengthens resilience. Life is unpredictable, filled with both joy and suffering. Without inner discipline, we become easily shaken by circumstances. But when we have trained ourselves through consistent prayer, we carry within us a stillness that is not broken by storms. Just as a martial artist does not panic in conflict because his discipline has prepared him, the one who prays daily does not collapse under hardship because their spirit has been trained to endure. The Rosary, prayed with discipline, builds this inner stability. Furthermore, discipline in prayer cultivates presence. Many people pray, but their minds wander, their words are empty, their hearts are elsewhere. True discipline calls us to be fully here, fully present in each word and each breath. This is not easy, it is a lifelong practice. But the more we train ourselves in prayer, the more we awaken the ability to live presently in every aspect of life, in our work, in our relationships, in our struggles. Discipline in prayer teaches us to be attentive to the sacredness of the moment, no matter where we are. Finally, discipline in prayer is discipline in love. The Rosary is not about empty formulas, but about love for God, love for Mary, and love for the mysteries of faith. Without discipline, love becomes fragile, dependent on feelings and moods. But disciplined love is steady, unshaken, and committed. This same principle applies in our families, in our friendships, and in our service to others. Discipline allows love to endure when challenges arise, when emotions fade, when sacrifice is required. So, when we say that discipline in prayer is discipline in life, we are not speaking of two separate realities. They are one. The way we commit to prayer reflects the way we commit to everything else. If we are consistent, patient, present, and resilient in prayer, those same qualities will naturally express themselves in our daily lives. And when discipline becomes our foundation, life itself becomes a prayer. The Rosary transforms repetition into meditation. At first glance, many people misunderstand the Rosary because of its repetitive nature. They see the constant reciting of the Hail Mary as something mechanical, as it were an empty ritual. But discipline reveals that repetition is not meaningless. In fact, repetition is the doorway to depth. When the mind is engaged in repeating words, something profound begins to happen. The heart starts to quiet down, distractions begin to fade, and the soul enters a space of stillness where meditation becomes possible. Think of how musicians practice scales. At first, the scales feel repetitive, even dull. But through that repetition, the hands become trained, the ear becomes refined, and eventually the musician can create beauty effortlessly. The Rosary functions in a similar way. The repeated prayers are not an end in themselves. They are the scales that train the heart. Each repetition gradually opens us to a deeper awareness of God's presence. What once felt like routine transforms into rhythm, and rhythm carries us into silence and contemplation. The human mind is restless by nature. It jumps from one thought to another, from past regrets to future worries, seldom resting in the present. Left unchecked, this mental chatter creates stress, confusion, and disconnection from what is sacred. The Rosary, with its repetition, acts as a gentle but steady anchor. Each Hail Mary is like the steady breath of meditation, reminding us again and again to return, to focus, to be present. Over time, the mind learns to let go of its wandering and to rest in a state of calm awareness. What seemed like monotonous words at first become a rhythm of peace that flows through the whole being. Another dimension of repetition is that it clears the path to mystery. The prayers themselves are simple, familiar, and easy to recite. This simplicity allows us to turn our attention toward the mysteries we meditate on: the Annunciation, the Visitation, the Nativity, and so on. Instead of being consumed by complicated thoughts or intellectual struggles, the repetition frees us to sink into the heart of the mysteries. It is like walking a familiar path in the forest. Because you know the way, your mind is not worried about direction, and you can instead focus on the beauty of the trees, the sound of the birds, and the warmth of the sun. In the same way, the repetitive prayers of the Rosary allow us to focus on the spiritual beauty that unfolds within the mysteries. Repetition also teaches humility. Our culture often seeks novelty, excitement, and constant change. We are tempted to think that value lies in what is new or unique, but the Rosary humbles us by showing that depth comes from returning to the same words, the same mysteries, the same path over and over again. In this humility, we realize that transformation does not require something new every day. It requires us to be faithful to what is eternal. And in that faithfulness, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. As repetition deepens into meditation, something even more profound takes place. The prayer of the lips becomes the prayer of the heart. At first, we say the words. Then, slowly, the words begin to shape us. They no longer remain outside, they enter into us and become part of us. In this way, the Rosary moves from being something we do to something we become. The love of Mary, the trust in God, the joy of the mysteries, these qualities begin to live within us, shaping our attitudes, our decisions, and our relationships. This is why the Rosary is such a powerful tool for transformation. It takes what appears ordinary and turns it into something extraordinary. Repetition becomes rhythm, rhythm becomes silence, silence becomes meditation, and meditation becomes union with God. When we pray the Rosary with this understanding, we discover that it is not about saying more, but about saying with depth. It is not about empty repetition, but about steady transformation. Therefore, repetition is not the weakness of the Rosary, it is its strength. It is the very thing that makes it accessible, meditative, and transformative. When we embrace the repetition, we embrace the process of being reshaped from within. And just as a sculptor chisels again and again to reveal the hidden beauty of the stone, the Rosary, through its repeated prayers, chisels away at our distractions and our pride until what remains is a soul quiet, focused, and united with God. Joyful mysteries teach openness and trust in beginnings. Every beginning carries uncertainty. It is the unknown, a step into territory where outcomes are not yet visible and the path ahead is unclear. Many people hesitate in front of beginnings because they feel vulnerable, afraid of failure, afraid of what they cannot control. But the joyful mysteries remind us that every sacred story starts with a beginning that required openness and trust. When Mary received the message of the angel, she did not yet know how everything would unfold. When Joseph accepted his role, he had no map of the future. When Christ was born in Bethlehem, the world did not yet recognize who he was. These beginnings were not accompanied by clarity, but by faith. The Annunciation is perhaps the most striking example of openness. Mary was presented with a mission far beyond her understanding, one that would alter her life forever. She could have refused, she could have let fear dictate her answer, but she chose trust, her yes. Teaches us that beginnings do not require certainty, they require courage to step forward with faith. This lesson echoes in our own lives. When we face new opportunities, new challenges, or even new sufferings, what matters is not that we understand everything, but that we remain open and willing to walk forward. The Visitation offers another lesson in beginnings. Mary, newly carrying this mystery within her, travels to visit Elizabeth. It is a moment of shared joy, of mutual support, of celebrating something that has just begun. This teaches us that beginnings often require community. We cannot always carry new burdens alone. When life presents us with a new path, we are invited to seek companionship, encouragement, and the strength of others. Openness is not only an individual act, it is also the willingness to share beginnings with others so that trust can grow together. Then comes the Nativity, a beginning clothed in simplicity. The Son of God enters the world not in a palace but in a manger. This shows us that great beginnings do not always appear grand or powerful. Many times they are hidden in smallness, in humility, in conditions that seem unworthy. Yet from such beginnings, the greatest transformations arise in our own lives too. We often dismiss the small opportunities, the quiet acts of kindness, the modest first steps because they do not appear impressive. The joyful mysteries remind us to trust that even the smallest beginnings can hold divine purpose. The presentation of Jesus in the temple further deepens this lesson. Mary and Joseph bring their child, offering him in accordance with tradition. It is an act of trust, acknowledging that this new beginning is not theirs alone, but belongs to God. This reminds us that beginnings are not possessions. When we start something new, whether it is a relationship, a project, or a personal transformation, we are called to entrust it to a greater plan, to recognize that we are stewards, not owners, of what begins in our lives. Finally, the finding of the child Jesus in the temple speaks to the unpredictability of beginnings. Mary and Joseph experience loss, searching anxiously for their child, yet through this difficulty, they discover a deeper truth about who he is. This teaches us that beginnings are rarely smooth. They include moments of confusion, moments where things seem lost or uncertain. But within those challenges lies the possibility of deeper understanding, of growth that would not have come otherwise. Trust allows us to endure the tension of these early struggles without giving up. Together, the joyful mysteries show us that beginnings are not to be feared, but embraced. They require openness to say yes, humility to accept simplicity, courage to endure uncertainty, and trust to surrender outcomes to God. When we practice this openness and trust, we stop seeing beginnings as obstacles and start recognizing them as opportunities for grace. Every new step becomes a chance to participate in something larger than ourselves. So the lesson is clear. Do not hesitate before beginning. Do not demand certainty before you move forward. Instead, let the joyful mysteries guide you. Let them remind you that every great story in faith and in life began with openness and trust. And just as Mary's yes opened the path for salvation to unfold, your own openness can allow something sacred to begin in your life today. Peace of mind arises from inner silence, not outer noise. In today's world, we are constantly surrounded by sound, voices, notifications, demands, and distractions that keep our attention pulled outward. Many people believe that if only they could change the outside, find a quieter place, rearrange their circumstances, escape responsibilities, then they would finally discover peace. But true peace is not a product of external conditions. It is born within, cultivated in the silence of the heart, regardless of how noisy or chaotic the outside world may be. The Rosary, through its meditative rhythm, is one of the most profound tools for learning this truth. When you pray the Rosary with sincerity, the repeated prayers begin to quiet the restless movements of the mind. At first, you may still hear the noise around you, the ticking of clock, the chatter of people, the hum of the world outside. But as you continue, the noise no longer disturbs you. You enter a space of stillness where the words of the prayers flow gently like waves upon the shore. This stillness is not dependent on external silence. It is created by your focus, your intent, presence. It is in this place peace of mind is born. The inner silence that arises is not an emptiness. It is not simply the absence of sound or thought. It is a fullness, a centeredness where you feel connected to God, to yourself, and to the deeper rhythm of life. Outer noise may still exist, but it loses its power to shake you. Just as a tree stands firm in the storm because its roots go deep into the earth, a mind rooted in inner silence remains stable even when surrounded by turbulence. Consider how often we seek peace in outer conditions. We imagine that if we travel to a quiet retreat, if we escape into nature, if we surround ourselves with order and calm, then we will finally feel peace. And yes, these things may help for a moment, but as soon as life's noise returns, so does our unrest. The joyful mysteries remind us that peace is not about where we are, but about how we are within. Mary found peace in uncertainty. Joseph found peace in responsibility, and Jesus himself was born into a world full of noise, yet carried the essence of divine peace. This shows us that peace is cultivated, not found outside. When the Rosary becomes a daily practice, it trains the heart to return again and again to that inner silence. Each beat becomes an anchor, each prayer a step deeper into the stillness. Over time, you begin to notice a change. Situations that once disturbed you lose their power. Words that once provoked you no longer control your response. Stress that once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable. This is the fruit of inner silence. It strengthens you, calms you, and gives clarity in the midst of confusion. Inner silence also opens the door to listening. Many of us pray by speaking, asking, and pleading, but forget the importance of listening. In silence, the heart becomes receptive. We begin to sense guidance, insight, and the gentle voice of God speaking not in thunder, but in whispers. This listening transforms prayer from a monologue into a dialogue, and peace arises from knowing we are not alone. Finally, peace born of inner silence radiates outward. When you carry this peace within, you do not keep it only for yourself. It flows into your interactions, your relationships, your decisions. Others sense it even if you do not speak about it. Your presence becomes calming, your words more thoughtful, your actions more compassionate. This is how inner silence becomes not only your strength but also a gift to the world. Therefore, true peace cannot be found by rearranging the noise outside. Outer noise will always exist in some form. True peace is cultivated by creating silence within, and the Rosary is a path to that silence. As you pray, let the repetition guide you inward. Let the mysteries remind you of divine presence. Let the silence grow stronger than the noise. Then, no matter what storms may surround you, your mind will rest in peace that the world cannot take away. True transformation always starts within. Many people spend their lives looking for change in the world outside. They try to fix their environment, adjust their circumstances, or control others in the hope that this will bring them happiness and fulfillment. But lasting transformation does not begin with what is external. It begins with the quiet and often unseen work inside the heart and mind. The Rosary is a path that constantly brings us back to this truth. The mysteries we meditate on are not only stories from the past, they are mirrors of our own journey, calling us to let change take root within before it manifests outside. When you pick up the Rosary, nothing in the world around you changes instantly. Your challenges remain, your responsibilities remain, the people around you remain the same, yet something begins to shift in you. Each prayer, each meditation is like planting a seed. At first, it is hidden beneath the surface where no one can see it. But with time, with repetition, and with faith, it begins to grow. That growth may be invisible at first, but eventually it transforms the way you think, the way you act, and the way you live. This is the inner transformation that prepares the way for outer change. Transformation within starts with awareness. The Rosary invites us to slow down, to reflect, and to see ourselves more clearly. As we meditate on the joyful mysteries, we are reminded of humility, trust, and faith. These are not abstract virtues, they are qualities that shape the way we respond to life. If we become more aware of our impatience, our fears, or our pride during prayer, then we are already beginning the process of transformation. Change cannot occur without awareness, and the Rosary provides the space for that awareness to grow. The next stage of transformation is surrender. Many of us resist change because we cling tightly to control. We want things to happen in our way, in our time. But the stories of the Rosary remind us that the greatest transformations occur when people surrender to God's plan. Mary surrendered her future with a simple yes. Joseph surrendered his doubts and trusted in the message given to him. This surrender did not make life easier, but it made it meaningful. When we surrender in prayer, we allow transformation to move us in ways we could never achieve by our own strength alone. Transformation within also requires perseverance. Just as no garden grows overnight, no heart is transformed instantly. It is through discipline, through returning to prayer day after day, that the soul is slowly reshaped. The Rosary teaches us patience in this process. Every bead is a reminder that progress comes step by step. prayer by prayer, moment by moment. When we are faithful in the small things, transformation becomes steady and lasting. As this inner transformation deepens, it begins to show itself outwardly. The peace we cultivate in prayer flows into how we treat others. The humility we learn from Mary becomes visible in our relationships. The trust we practice in prayer strengthens us when life brings uncertainty. Transformation is no longer hidden, it becomes a living testimony. Others may notice that you react differently, that your words carry more kindness, that your presence brings calm. What began silently within becomes visible in the world outside. True transformation is not about becoming someone else, it is about becoming who you were always meant to be. The Rosary helps remove the layers of fear, pride, and doubt that cover the soul, revealing the image of God already placed within you. This is why transformation must start inside, because only by working within can we align with the truth of who we are. From this alignment, all external change flows naturally. So, when we seek transformation, we must resist the temptation to focus only on the outside. Instead, we return to the Rosary, to prayer, to meditation. We let the mysteries speak to us, guide us, and shape us. And as we do, we realize that true change is not imposed from outside, but awakened from within. In that awakening, we discover the strength, the peace, and the love that allow us to transform not only ourselves, but also the world around us. Ladies and gentlemen, as we walk together through today's Rosary and the joyful mysteries, we are reminded of something essential. Life's true power is not found outside, but within. Discipline in prayer shapes the discipline of our lives. Repetition, when embraced, becomes meditation and transformation. Beginnings, though uncertain, call us to openness and trust. Peace is discovered not in outer silence, but in the stillness of the heart. And every lasting change, every true transformation always begins from within. The Rosary is not only a prayer, it is a way of living. It teaches us presence, patience, and surrender. It shows us that the challenges we face are not obstacles but invitations. And it reminds us that when the heart is rooted in faith, when the mind is trained in silence, and when the soul is open to trust, then life itself becomes a prayer. So as you leave here today, do not carry the Rosary as just beads in your hand. Carry it as a rhythm in your heart. Let it guide your steps, shape your choices, and strengthen your spirit. For in this discipline, in this meditation, in this trust, you will discover the peace and transformation that no circumstance can take away. Thank you.